I mean, this is a good one. I mean, you want to talk about a myth. Open rates matter. That's a myth for prospecting.
Yeah.
Open rates don't matter at all whatsoever. Stop tracking them. Like, turn them off. Click rates, same thing. If you're tracking open rates, what happens is it puts a little pixel, so a little image goes into every one of the emails. And when the recipient receives that email and when they open it, it tries to load that image, load that pixel. When that pixel gets loaded, it sends a message back to your sequencer tool that says this message was opened. Great. In theory, 10 years ago, it worked amazingly. Today, now, everybody that has an iPhone, all of those emails are all opened automatically. So every email that comes in to the mail app is automatically opened in the back end through a proxy. And so you're going to get all of these images are loaded automatically. So simply by just sending emails, you will get some of them opened and they will look like they're opened. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Sales Community Podcast. We got a fun one today. We are going to talk about the anti-sales playbook with Jess and Nick and myself.
Yeah.
Jess is going to take us through a bunch of different topics, and we are going to share our opinions on what we think is the common misconceptions, the ways that people are, perhaps doing things incorrectly, ways you've thought are accurate, maybe not so accurate. Then we'll actually share some of the best practices, things that we see actually work.
I think we get told a lot what to do, the things that we should be doing, but no one really tells you what not to do from their own experiences. So I think it would be nice to run through some of that and try and keep it a little bit structured. So I was thinking we could go through, starting in, let's do prospecting, go through the kind of different myths and mistakes that people tend to make around that. And then maybe move on to pitching and closing. And then we can go through some bad things that people do when training their teams as well. And then maybe cover some things on events, because I think there's some interesting things to talk about there. So if we start with prospecting, what is, the worst opening line to an email that you've ever seen?
So, okay, I have to say, the worst is probably where you just like cuss somebody out, right? Like, that's obviously not going to probably work. However, I think the most like commonly used one that is completely pointless and just takes up the most important real estate of the email is, "Hi, my name is Harrison with Succession." Like, I can literally see your name in the inbox. I can see it in the signature. I don't need you to explain who you are in the first sentence. And then it just takes up the most important real estate of trying to get your email opened, which is like that preview text.
And the follow-on piece for that is, "I'm your local rep, blah, blah, blah." No one cares.
Literally.
Like, are you going to be able to get me the thing I need? That's more important than where you are.
Yeah.
I'm surprised neither of you said, "Hi, I hope you are doing well."
So that also sucks. But at least
This is nice, right?
I think at least that is like a, "Hey, hope you're well." Like, I hate it, but it's still better than, "Hi, my name is," unless you're like Slim Shady. It doesn't like,
Yeah. Are we singing again? That's how we started for your report.
I always get the urge when people email me like, "I hope you are doing well," to be like, "Oh, I hope this email finds you well." Like, actually, no, it doesn't find me well.
Some of the best like LinkedIn posts I've done are just like about, "I hope this finds you well," and people just like hating it so much and laughing about it. And so, yeah, there's clearly a adverse reaction to that.
Okay, so we've done, the most important one, which is first line. Everything else doesn't really matter. I think one of the things that we spend a lot of time on, probably on our like every single day, is trying to figure out who we prospect to, right? Like, what is our ICP and who are the different job titles that we want to target? And I think in the past, for myself, and also I see quite a lot of other people do it, is they're sending what they think is a really targeted, really personalized message in terms of like therapeutic area or a modality or like the features and the outcomes and benefits that they think is right for a particular company based on what they're working on. But I don't think people treat like different seniority levels differently enough. I think people assume that like scientific leadership are going to care about the same cold emails that your bench level scientists are. And you've got so little words to put into that email. And so people just are like, okay, they're working on this target and, you know, their problems are going to be this, but they don't segment that out enough. Do you guys have like any thoughts on that in terms of how to make sure that you're hitting the right things for the right person? Or
If you are personalizing your message, is great. Like you're still better. You're doing better than most people. So I'm not gonna be too hard on you there. But yeah, I think people just don't think about the recipient of their message is the biggest thing. Like whether it's their title, whether it's their role, whether it's their company. Most people are thinking about themselves when they're writing prospecting messages. It's like, hey, I need to tell them about what we do. I need to like basically throw my elevator pitch, all the 17 bullet points that I've got about how we can help solve all of their problems. Actually, you're probably not even thinking about their problems. You're probably just talking about your capabilities and what it is that you can do. And I think that is like the common thread versus flipping it and thinking about what is it my prospect really cares about and like what are their goals, what are their objectives, and then how do I tie back my solution to then help solve those problems.
In the name of these being the anti-playbook, that's great advice, but I think the thing that people are all doing wrong, and I've been guilty of this a long time ago, I don't do this now for any customers listening, but a long time ago, is that prospecting is a job to be ticked off, right? I need to get prospecting done. Everyone says you have to prospect. So I've got to get this done and I need to get 10 out today. It's really low return. So fuck it. Let's just send 10, job, tick, done, right? And that's why it's more about the action of I have to prospect, I'm going to get it done, than the things you said, Harrison, of how is this going to be received? How is this going to be read? Who's it going to? And all of those important things about actually will increase the effectiveness of that effort. And it's not. So I think it's seeing it as an active thing you're doing rather than worrying about just getting it ticked off the list is really crucial.
kind of a bit of a broader question then, like if we are focusing on things that you absolutely should not do, misconceptions, myths that people have, mistakes that people make, what do you think are your top ones that you see happening that irritate you and you want people to stop?
Almost contrary to what I just said, I might say the phrase, no one fucking cares, right? We've said this phrase and it's not, don't take it too literally. We do care, but people overthink the message. Yes, you need to think about the recipient, their job, their activity, their goal, how they're feeling. You need to think about all of these things. People care about your message. It does not matter if you open with, I hope this finds you well, or you would normally finish something, sir, and today, like, so sincerely, and today you're finishing it, thanks. Those tiny details do not matter. And people that don't want to respond won't even remember your message. So I think the overthinking part stops people sending good enough messages to get a response.
Yeah, like I think it's knowing when you should care, right? Like don't care about the stuff that people are going to forget about tomorrow, but care about the stuff that might actually interest them. It's like your, VP of a department doesn't care that your, whatever cells you're offering going to take 3 days less for the scientists in the lab. Like they don't care that it's going to like save them a little bit of time. They care about like the overall impact. Like put something in that someone actually cares about and worry about that instead of worrying about, how you sign your email off, whether you've got the right sort of like, intro in there as well. As long as it's not, hi, I'm Jess and I work for this company and we do this, or hope this email finds you well. I think, that makes sense.
Yeah, the other thing that I think I've really noticed the last couple of years now working with so many different companies is that the only thing that matters is like, do people actually want what you're selling? Because you can't put lipstick on a pig if like people don't want what you have. Doesn't matter how good your messaging is, doesn't matter about anything else. Like, but like also if you have something that people want, if your messaging is bad, like that's obviously not going to work. But the best campaigns, the best results all come from like hitting up the right person at the right time where they kind of already are thinking them out, or they may need the thing that you are offering. And if that's like people people will, and I think this is where like you can kind of get into this like misconception, like volume doesn't matter, because it does matter. Like there's probably only like 3% of people in the like in your market that are looking for whatever it is that you're selling or whatever it is that you could offer. And so if you're only doing 10 emails a day, you're literally never going to find those people. Like it's just not going to happen. And so it's going to take you 10 days to like probably get like one or two people to respond. Like, it's just ridiculous. And so if you are, if you think that volume is not a contributing factor to outbound, I would say that's also a misconception. So there's the people that say like quality only matters. And like, that's just also false.
Yeah, we often talk about the list first, and that's because your message has to matter, like you said, and your product has to matter to that person. So if you get the right people in that list, then it's easier to make it matter. What the challenge is though, and why the size of the list still matters, is getting to enough of those people, and also not all of the data on LinkedIn and the internet and all of these places you go is not 100% perfect. So there will be people that don't give you enough information to fit your ICP, but actually are as well.
Well, I think even on that, right, is like as you try to build up the size of the list, like you're going to have, if you're trying, you could spend hours trying to make the list perfect, right? Let's say you've got a list of a couple hundred people. You could spend, hours trying to go through and like make sure everybody's an absolute perfect fit. You could make sure that like, you have absolutely every variable dialed in and it's going to be absolutely perfect for how you're going to reach out to them. And I think that is a use of time. You can do that, but I think oftentimes it can be complete overkill. Especially if you're working with lists of like a couple thousand people, like I think it's definitely overkill. If you've got like 20 people, then sure, like you probably want to be very specific. But I think the common misconception is that most people aren't going to even see your email. Most people aren't going to respond. And so you're better off just hitting send rather than trying to like overthink everything. It's like you're better off just doing something than like getting stuck in like analysis paralysis.
Yeah, I think we talked about that when me and Nick did our podcast episode a few weeks ago. It's like, you don't just need to have quality or just need to have quantity. You need to find a balance between the two. And so many people spend so much time arguing about one approach or the other. But yeah, figure out a way to do both without wasting too much time and see what happens. And then revisit it if it doesn't go your way.
I think the other thing that comes around to all of this is you're not sending to yourself. We've spoken about this before, so I won't go too deep on that. But essentially, you are always, and I've been guilty of it and I still am, and I have to check myself, is that you will write a message and be like, oh, that doesn't sound right, because that isn't what would sound right to you. But what you're doing is, as a scientist, this is a numbers game, right? You're writing a message that will resonate. There are some people that is not the right way to write it for, but you are writing to a general audience, not to yourself. And that's what you have to remember.
Yeah, and you just never
hear all the time where people be like, hey, I would never respond to that. I'm like, well, you're not your customer. So why don't we test it and see what happens? Because this does work.
Yeah,
I think see this all the time, especially from like, I think some clients is like, we'll put together some initial messaging. You're like, wow, this sounds like very direct. It's like, yeah, because that's what works. Like when you beat around the bush, you take up too much space. Nobody wants to read your stinking email. Like you've got you don't even have 30 seconds to catch somebody's attention. You've got like 5. So if you can't catch their attention in 5 seconds, like you're not getting a response. And I think, that's another one I want to talk about. The way that you differentiate yourself in a call, in a conversation with somebody is completely different than how you have to differentiate over email, right? In an email, you got less than 100 words to figure out how you're going to pique somebody's curiosity to get them to respond. Whereas if you got a call, you can easily ask a bunch of questions. You could dig into the details. You could talk about your differentiators. And that's just like not easy to do in 100 words, or it's a different process to think through. And so I think what people default to is they say, hey, I'm going to like put it all in this like one email and I'm going to give you everything that I do, everything that we can do for you. And then like let you figure out what it is that you want to do and how you want to, work with us. And it just doesn't work. Like long emails don't really work well. Like stuffing too much information into them doesn't really work well. So,
we're not doing a very good job of telling people what not to do in clear sentences. So I feel like we've got the myths are everybody fucking cares. Not true. Nobody cares about
nobody's gonna remember,
no, about the surface level stuff. We've got you can bring the same information into an email as you can into a call. False. Help me out with the remembering.
Quality is always more important than quantity. Not always true.
I think the general overview is that do not overthink it, but do not be lazy and just hit send. Do some due diligence, some interest, and work on whether you can understand the pains and the problems of these people. Once you've got that clear and in a message, do not overthink the detail and send the message.
Yeah, find a balance. I think another one is you should treat, email outreach and LinkedIn outreach the same, which obviously is not a good idea. Very different channels, and I see a lot of people, I get them all the time, everyone will get them all the time. You get these big long LinkedIn messages that are just like paragraph after paragraph, which is kind of what you'd see in a cold email. I'm not suggesting you do that in cold email either, but I think LinkedIn is such a personal thing. I think more nowadays than any other time, where people have their own sort of personal brand. They're talking about personal things. They're posting about interesting stuff. And they don't want someone to email them with all the details of their service or product or whatever it might be. They want to engage in some sort of interesting conversation. And I think that's still the goal of email, but you have an email channel to give people some more kind of like technical insight, or try and, get them engaged in some sort of conversation or call. But I think with LinkedIn, you have to go a lot shorter. No one's reading LinkedIn like messages most of the time, like in work time. Sometimes they're reading them outside. They want a quick thing and go, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to respond to it. And I think a lot of people don't differentiate there, and then they end up just sending the same thing to both, and it's sort of like a wasted use of time, because why bother sending exactly the same thing? Utilize them differently, and take advantage of the fact that they are very different channels. And I know we do that a lot with the clients that we have.
But yeah, I think touching on LinkedIn. Yeah, another thing I think I've seen a lot of people do on LinkedIn is they send a bunch of follow-ups in the same way that you might in email, where again, they're two different channels. Email, things literally get lost or they just get deleted before they're opened. It is very rare, I think, that people are just going to not see a LinkedIn message and or they just like physically have not been in their like messenger app or whatever in LinkedIn, and they just have a bunch of unread. Like I could see that happening as well. But like if you're sending multiple messages in the same thread on LinkedIn, those are also going to be there forever. Like on email, they're just gone. Like you can make a new thread, you can follow up separately. But if you ever want to message this person ever again, like in 2 years, in a year and a half, whatever, and there's like 3 other messages that you sent to them previously, those are all going to be there. Like they're not going away. And so I think you also need to treat LinkedIn a lot differently in a sales capacity for the follow-up that you do, or the call like the lack of follow-up is like if you send somebody and it's a very sort of like direct message, like, hey, is this something that you're interested in? And like you don't get responses, like do not bombard them. Like that's just going to hurt you later on in the long run. And I think that's where it's a different channel than email, whereas email should stay top of mind as much as possible for as long as possible. Because people are just they're not going to remember you. You're not going to be, the thing that's top of mind. But that message in LinkedIn is going to live there forever.
Yeah, I disagree. They'll remember me. Very important. Always going to remember me.
Well, those messages will come back to haunt you at some point. Especially think if you move jobs as well, and you're like, oh, I need to contact this person again. And I've had someone where they send a message after message, and it's like a video, and then you just like, I was not interested as the first one. But I think a good way to use LinkedIn as well, though, is you can send pieces of content that you wouldn't want to send over email. So like you get away with, maybe sending an image or a link that, you're going to end up in spam with most of the time on email. So yeah, I think just thinking a bit smarter about when you utilize what channel and how you actually use it and the messaging with your.
I mean, this is a good one. I mean, you want to talk about a myth. Open rates matter. That's a myth for prospecting. Yeah. Open rates don't matter at all whatsoever. Stop tracking them. Like turn them off. Click rates, same thing. We actually did a newsletter specifically on this topic, but The short version of it is if you're tracking open rates, what happens is it puts a little pixel, so a little image goes into every one of the emails. And when the recipient receives that email and when they open it, it tries to load that image and load that pixel. When that pixel gets loaded, it sends a message back to your sequencer tool that says this message was opened. Great. In theory, 10 years ago, it worked amazingly. Today, now, everybody that has an iPhone, all of those emails are all opened automatically. So every email that comes into the mail app is automatically opened in the back end through a proxy. And so you're going to get all of these images are loaded automatically. So simply by just sending emails, you will get some of them opened and they will look like they're opened. On the flip side, a lot of companies have hard security around, will they load images? And so they actually don't load any images when you send messages. And so your email is, even if they open it, they won't load the pixel, so you actually don't know that they opened it. So if you've ever had a situation where it's like somebody responded to an email, but they never opened it, you were tracking opens, well, that's why, because they didn't actually download the image. So you end up with false positives and false negatives, so the data is terrible, so there's no point in tracking it. And the fact that there is that pixel, Google and Outlook will pick it up and say, this is definitely a marketing or sales email, so we're more likely to put it in the spam folder or the promotions tab. So just don't do it.
You're not bitter about people tracking open rates, though. You can't.
Hey, actually, if the more people track open rates, the more people that track open rates, the better, right? Because that's just going to give us a better chance of landing in the inbox versus them.
Yeah, so everyone track open rates, but we won't.
Yeah. So in terms of scientific speak, too many false positives, don't bother.
Yeah. Good summary.
And false negatives.
So we'll kind of do like a bit of a subtopic before moving on to the next one. But I did want to talk a little bit about events. And I just think in so many cases, people go to events and just immediately think a booth is going to equal leads, right? And there's just so much more that goes into it. And you see people spending all this money, like thousands and thousands of pounds, dollars, whatever currency you want to use. And then they leave and they're disappointed and they sit there and wonder why they haven't got any leads. And I think one of the things which I thought about recently is like your outreach should not start, like you shouldn't treat an event as like the start of your outreach. It's sort of like somewhere in the middle of a kind of longer campaign, really, if you want to call it a campaign. It should be a way to kind of build on connections and like build like trust with people within the industry and, not really come with the mindset that I'm going to leave with, X amount of deals I'm going to close next week. Great if you do. But then I also think there's a lot around like preparation and then like post-event follow-up stuff, which people tend to get wrong and I wonder why. So interested to hear your thoughts on that. Either of you, one of you, none of you. I'll just keep talking if you want.
Let's take a quick break from the podcast to talk about what we have going on over here at Succession. We work with 40 plus life science sales companies to help them find more opportunities and close more deals. We provide a range of services to support your sales growth. So whether it's increasing top of funnel opportunities with done for you lead generation, in-person or virtual sales training reinforced by personalized training plans, recruiting top sales talent, or just building custom AI workflows to help make your team more efficient, focus on selling. So if you're ready to transform your sales strategy, visit succession.bio and schedule a call with Nick and I, and we'll see how we can support you.
I'll go. I have a bugbear about events because I've set many up as a sales leader and watched people attend. So in the aims of like do's and don'ts, I think it is, don't see it as a standalone event. Like you said, there's pre-work, there's preparation to make sure it goes well. Don't turn up and then don't forget about it afterwards. Often reps will be like, these are my hot leads. I'll go deal with that. The rest of it's nothing, leave it. And then there's a big long list of people that spoke to you that never get touched or spoken to again. So don't ignore the follow-up. But I have a very big list of don'ts for at the conference that I hate. So much so that I started a new job and it was a small company and the CEO laughed and said, I thought I was the boss. And I said, not here, this is my conference. And I told him he's not allowed to eat at the booth. He's not allowed his laptop at the booth. I don't want to see him sitting at the booth. Like, this is an active process. You're going to be engaging with people or you can go mingle. And luckily he laughed and accepted it because I've known him for a while. But I think there's a lot of that. You just go to a booth, you sit down and you wait for people to come to you. You don't really set yourself any other KPIs for at that conference. And I think that's something that has to happen. You you need to engage with it as a process. You're a rep and you're there to do a job, and it's, like you said, it's expensive. So for example, I would set myself with micro commitments and getting people to commit to further. You have a conversation, what's the next step? So I would have my calendar open on a booth, and I would tell these people, we're great, yeah, we're a great chat. When should we book our next meeting in? Here it is. And I'd set myself a goal for how many of those meetings I want booked by the end of that conference. So yeah, there's a few thoughts from me anyway.
Yeah, what's the anti-playbook, right? The anti-playbook here is if we schedule an event and we show up to the event, we will get leads, right? That's sort of like the thought process. To your point, Jess, like that is just not really the approach that's going to get you the best results, right? If your goal, and I guess it should also come down to like, what's your goal of the event? Like if your goal is like simply brand awareness, if your goal is to actually get meetings and leads, like kind of depends on that, right? So have a pre-event strategy. Who's going to be going to the event? Can you reach out? Can you book meetings while you're already there before you even get to the event? Then while you're at the event, can you go to talks? Can you go try and network? Can you go find other people? Like if you're truly trying to get leads, you can't just like sit at the booth either and like hope for the best. Like you have to like proactively go out and go find people, get involved in discussions, get involved in conversations. And then, event follow-up. I think event follow-up is something that people mess up a lot in that, hey, we had a conversation at the event, and they simply follow up with every person that they had a conversation with the exact same way. They also talked to 10 people while they were at the event, 20 companies while they're at the event, whatever. And so if all those reps are going to follow up the same way, now they're just like flooded with all of this crap follow up. And so you need to have a way to stand out. So find like a question or something that you can learn about somebody as a person, and then follow up specifically around that. Make a reference to the thing that you uncovered in your discussion. In order to do this, you have to like take notes. You have to actually write this stuff down while you're at the event, like have a notes app on your phone or something where you can just like type it in really quick. And then the other piece on the follow-up is that people will wait too long. I'm a big fan of, you're at the event, when you get home, before you're done, just like follow up with the people from that day. Like be like the first person to follow up with them, be the most proactive, be like better than every other rep. And like, you're going to stand out. You're going to get more responses to that follow-up as well. So
I've had it where people did it while I'm at the event. I've had it where people did it while they walk away from the booth and they send a quick follow-up to be top of mind. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like I would, just do that. And like, you're going to be like, it's going to be you're going to have a lot better success. So it's like, have a process pre-event, have a process while you're at the event, have a process when you follow up after the event. That's how you're going to maximize events, not just like, I'm going to pay the fee to show up, have my booth, scan some badges, get some like leads, and then, sending it the same marketing email blast.
So the anti-playbook is turn up to the event, don't worry about it, eat your lunch at the booth, be on your laptop when everyone's walking past because you've got some emails to get done and a quote to get out, and just pretty much ignore the other people and don't take any notes.
Yeah, sounds like a great plan.
It's what a lot of people do, even though they don't verbalize it that way. If you walk around a conference, you'll see a lot of it.
No, that was what you just said, like with the getting meetings booked in was such a game changer for me. Like sitting people when you're having a meeting at a conference and like you talk to someone and just being like, yeah, so I'm free like next week on like, Wednesday, Thursday between these days, and just making them put it into their calendar while they're sat in front of you. Cause I think there's so many people that after an event, like some people go traveling or some people take a couple of days off or they're like exhausted or they're catching up on work, that like even in those first couple of days afterwards, even if you're quick with your follow-ups, like people just miss it and you actually had a really good conversation and it just gets lost in the noise.
It's also a great qualifier. When they go, oh, I'm not now, oh, maybe another day. Okay, you'll be like, okay, so this isn't a priority for you. I'll follow up with you. Like you've qualified them out rather than being someone on your eternal follow-up list. They become your nurture list. Whereas the person that actually cares and was as interested as they sound and they didn't just want your t-shirt on your booth, will actually schedule that call.
Yeah. And I think another one, like if you've put that effort into at the event, pre-event, post-event, you've set good KPIs. I think particularly one that maybe like sales leaders, when they're thinking about what their conference calendar looks like for the next year, is to just go, oh, well, this conference has like our target market at, so we're going to go to this one every year. But I've seen people like consistently not do well at events, even though they're doing everything they can. And then they just continue going back and spending money. And I think one way to get around that a little bit is extend what those like KPIs at like beyond the events, and not just like, okay, how many meetings did we get at the event? Like you said before, how many follow-up meetings did we get? And then from those follow-up meetings, how many like POs did we get? How much like follow-up business did we get from that? And I think we tie that back to a lot of other kind of, I guess, lead generation activities. But I think people go in a little bit blindly with events sometimes, just go, well, we must go to this event. It's great. But don't really look at what ROI they actually got on it the previous years, which is, I think we're on.
This is a good one. Yeah, not tracking. Another good anti-playbook.
Yeah. So that's events. I think maybe training next. We were up for a bit of training chat.
All right. Yeah. Lead the witness.
Do you know that we also do training at Succession as well as lead generation? People know that.
Right. But yeah.
Some people like, because we've trained them. Others maybe not.
Yeah, everyone else. Yeah, so
Lots of sales kickoff calls coming up. Let us know. At the pitch done. Carry on.
Yeah.
you know, in the in anti-playbook world, sales training is you give people some product training for a couple of hours, you throw them on it. You want to say something,
I'm desperate.
Are you gonna let me finish?
Go on.
You throw them on a few sales calls, and people just learn on the job, right? Like I've heard that so much, and be like, yeah, you just gotta like learn on the job, you'll pick it up. And they think that as long as they know the technical details, like everything else is just like a personality thing that will come naturally. That's right? That's how people learn sales. Yeah?
Definitely.
Cool. I'll finish.
Just yeah.
Sentence.
I think I should let Nick wait.
No. No, I was just thinking about something I was always told about training, and I think it's an sort of adage that a lot of people say, especially if you're experienced, and I think it's lazy and not correct. And if this is your view, you probably shouldn't go to the training. And often you'll hear, well, if I walk away of learning one thing, it was worth the job. It was worth the training. And the people will say this when they're going to a 2-day training thing. And I think now, if that's your bar, go to the internet. There's so many videos. There's so many trainers on there doing content. There's so much on LinkedIn. If your bar's to learn one new thing you can incorporate, I think that's a pretty low bar. So that's my sort of anti-playbook, sorry, Harrison's rubbing off, anti-playbook. But the alternative is to do training that is actually effective and aligned with your company, and that you walk out with multiple things that you put into a sales playbook that is now used across the team to bring everyone up to a correct level of training for your objective.
That in mind is that like, hey, we can do a training session and then everybody's going to remember the information, and like that's enough to like implement this training across the team. Like that is, I think that's just like way too common of something that occurs where it's like training is thought of this like one and done activity. Like we're going to train the team and then they are now going to be able to implement what we just trained them on. And it's just like fundamentally just not true at all. And this is for everything. This is for sales training, product training, how to use tools, how to use different systems, like all sorts of training whatsoever. It's like you only have so much capacity to remember something. Like there's this concept called the forgetting curve, where like the first time you see something, like you forget 90% of it within a couple of hours. Like it's pretty crazy. And so then, and you have to constantly be reminded about these things on a regular basis. So if you are going to roll out training or you are going to do training, there has to be like sets of practice, sets of conversations, like to call it enforcement if you want, but call it like reinforcement, call it like additional practice. Like training can really not be this like one-time thing, because it's just going to be so much information it's thrown at people, they're just going to forget it all. And so it really has to be, it's almost more important to think about how you're going to reinforce stuff and how you're going to execute like the training that you want is like the more important piece.
I hate when people use professional sports as an analogy, but I think in this scenario it's perfect, because you don't say, oh, he's the best footballer in the world as well, or the best basketball player or foosball or whatever the American sports are. You don't say they're the best at that in the world. don't go to training today or tomorrow or the next day or whatever. Just you're the best already. You can just do your cardio. You don't need to do your skills activity. Whereas actually in professional sports and in many industries, it's seen as a continual process that has to be constantly carried out. Whereas I think particularly in the life sciences as well, because we're very technical, it's seen as a checkbox often. Oh, we have to do personal and professional development because HR says we have to do it, so let's do that. Rather than the fact this is actually going to impact my key objective this year of X revenue or X growth in key accounts. And I think that is the anti-playbook, is to see it as something that's a checkbox.
Yeah, and I think to add to that as well, and I'm going to continue the sporting analogy, but I'm going to show my boring side and make a Tour de France reference. So I was watching. I know.
Let's all start injecting ourselves with oxygen. We'll be better at sales.
Some bloke on a bike going to shop.
That's the advice. Get some sales performing enhancing drugs. No, I was watching the new. I call it Tour to Survive because it's the same people that make the Drive to Survive F1 Netflix documentary where they make everything really dramatized. But like the top team is like UAE Emirates, right? And they have a cyclist called Tadej Pogacar. He's amazing. He doesn't take performance enhancing drugs. And what he was talking about, what made the difference for them when he won last year and then again this year, was like the technology and like the bikes and like the nutrition and all these new things that they brought in that were not around when he won the Tour like a couple of years ago. Because they had the money to and they had the time and the kind of forethought to be like, if we do this, it's going to give us a fraction of, you know, whatever on performance. And I think even when teams have like consistent training in place, they have someone who's like, this is the way we train people, this is the way things work, and they don't update that as new things come out. And there's so crazy to me because so many kind of people in those leadership positions and the people that we work with and the people that injure, like they're all scientists. Like the whole thing about science is like innovation and new things and discovering new ideas and data, but we don't apply that to the way that we run commercial teams very often. Like how much stuff has come out in the past like year that we're using, that we see other people using, that people just aren't aware of. And even in the past like 5 years, people are doing it old school and it's hurting them because everyone else is moving on and trying these new things.
Well, I think
as well.
I think it's a boring but good analogy. So I think that the point is actually probably sales is a competitive sport, and we don't see it that way because how many of our clients or how many companies out there have a competitor, right? So you can think, oh, it's just an incremental gain. But if that incremental gain is 1% over your competition, you'll start to win more deals, right? So you have to be ahead of them, even if it's a longer road to be better. I'm not saying you should focus on your competition. That's a bad thing to do. But focusing on being as good as you can in your organization so that you're a step ahead of these people is going to win you more deals.
For sure. You made a road ahead reference there. I feel like that was still on the cyclist.
What?
So you use the word road. They're road bikes.
I'll change it for a different analogy, which is an old joke about two cameramen in the Serengeti, if you want.
No.
A lion appears. I'm going to do it. A lion appears, and one guy starts putting on a pair of sneakers or trainers, and the other cameraman goes, "You're never outrunning a lion in that." He says, "I've just got to outrun you."
Exactly. You just got to do better than whoever's doing something similar to you, right? And hopefully that should make the difference.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would probably highlight here too, just around training, is that oftentimes if we are doing well, we think that, to your point, Jess, is like we don't need, like we're doing well. We don't need to like continue to up level our skills. We don't need to continuously try to evolve. It's like, hey, I hit my quota last quarter. I don't need this training. Or it's like, hey, I've done like 10 sales trainings before. Like, why do I need another one? And I think that's a common, if for more experienced people, I think that's a really common mindset, and it's a reductive mindset versus like a growth mindset. And I think having a growth mindset in life in general is just always better. And so if you come into situations with like a negative attitude, like, why the hell am I doing this? Like, you're just not going to get stuff out of it. And, you know, there's always every training we've ever done ever, there's always somebody that's kind of like that, where they're just like, why the hell am I here? And like, they're just not going to get the most out of it. You know, it's just not, it's not a good mindset to come into a situation with.
But we practice what we preach there, right? We've been doing this a long time. We focus on sales training. We focus on sales skills. It's our life, right? So we're always looking for new things. But we go into a training session and we expect to learn from the audience as well as be teaching them. And then we take these into the next training. So we're not there like, we're the trainer, listen to us. There's a lot of people in the room that can share as well. And I think, like you say, that's that growth mindset, pushing that forward and learning from everybody.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think with training as well, I think Harrison, you talked, I don't know if it was the two of you, I just saw your face on the clip, in the recent podcast that you did about different personalities in sales, right? And I am such a big believer that there is not one type of personality. So I think there are personalities that are not suited to sales just because of who they are, but I don't think that there is only one, set. It's not whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. I think there's different types of people that can do it in their own way. But I think when that comes to training, different people's background, different people's personalities, it means that like a one size fits all model for training, or I think a lot of people will be like, right, okay, this is our like training structure. We're going to give it to any new reps that come in. They're going to learn stuff and everyone's going to perform exactly the same and to the level that we need them to with this same material. How do you guys approach that when training teams, and what you've done in the past when you have different personality types and different backgrounds within that pool of people that you're training?
I mean, I think one of the key parts is just like, is if you can, so like a lot of the times in trainings, the people that speak up tend to be the more outgoing type. So the people that are sharing a lot of the information tend to be the more outgoing types. And that's where I think when you get people into like smaller groups, you can see more of those like individual personalities come through. And I think that's where you can get a lot more of like the individual development can come out. If you just like keep everybody in a large group, a pure introvert is not going to be like super excited to just shout out answers. And it's, I think, the small group focused discussions around like very tactical real life use cases for that company is where the actual learning, a lot of the learning takes place. It's the application of what was just shared and taught.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think too is like, then if you want to think about like how to take a training program and make sure that it's applied to everybody effectively, is it's not to think of it as this one size fits all training where I'm going to train everybody on this thing in this way. Coming back, make another down sports analogy, but sales is very similar to sports in the sense that there are many micro skills that make up being a good athlete. So let's say you're playing soccer or football, whichever country you're in, like you need to be good at dribbling, positioning on the pitch. You need to be in good conditioning. You have to be able to shoot. You have to be able to pass. Like there's all sorts of different things that you have to be able to do as skills. And the same thing happens in sales. There's all sorts of different skills that you have to be able to have. And so when you're taking a training and trying to teach everybody the exact same thing in the same way, it's just not going to land. And so in order to adapt to different people's personalities and skill levels, is you ultimately want to be creating training programs that are individual to those people so that they can up-level their individual skills, right? If you've got a rep who's great at discovery, we're doing awesome at it, and we have another rep who's not as good at it, well, like, why would you have them both be doing the exact same training, right? So I think I'll feel you through how you structure that. If you really want to make an impact in your training, those are the types of considerations you have to make.
Yeah, not to make it a pitch, but in terms of how we often will solve that is that we look to do in-person and group trainings that bring everybody to a level where it is necessary for them to function in that particular objective, right? So if that objective is key accounts, then everybody has to have a similar sort of understanding of the core skills in approaching that objective. But then you have follow-up with personalized learning paths or personalized one-to-ones with your manager that you dig into the areas that for that individual need raising to help them execute that company plan of key account management that has been presented.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we're like 40 odd minutes in now. So I will ask you a final question on training, which is, you had to pick one thing that people should stop doing when training their teams, what would it be? Tumbleweed. That's all I've got on mine.
If I had to pick one thing for people to stop doing, it would be to think of it as a check the box. I'm going to train the team, and we're going to do this as a one-time event. I think that is the biggest excuse, or like I would also say like the most common thing. It's like you may not actually believe it in the back of your mind. You may think you're doing something good, but again, you think of training as like, I'm going to do training at our sales kickoff at the beginning of the year, and then that is going to make a difference. It's not. Like that is not like the sole purpose. Like you have to have more involvement across like actually getting that training to be implemented and used. It can't just be thought of as a one-time event.
I also think that I agree with that. And if I was going to add one thing, it would be to see it as something that's optional. So people will often think, well, I don't know, we're writing a budget for a conference. We can afford X number of conferences, but we can't do training this year because there's no budget for it. Whereas I think that actually it should be seen as a core component of success in your company and always factored in, whether times are good or bad. It should be something you're doing. Even if you have to decide you're going to do this yourself and write it and build and do the training internally from the skills you have, it isn't something that's optional.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you guys whether you want to cover pitching, closing.
I know we're at time. I think we're at time, but we can always come back with another one. So if we like these anti-playbook ideas, what are the common misconceptions? That's anti, not anti. And we can keep them coming.
When you have
Any new ideas, throw them in and we'll do other anti-playbooks.
Yeah, sounds great.